This video will be about reflexive verbs in Spanish, or los verbos reflexivos. To start, we're going to talk about how we identify reflexive verbs. These are a little bit different than how we are used to seeing verbs, because reflexive verbs are verbs that have a se attached to the infinitive. So when the verb is unconjugated, it has a se attached to the bottom, or to the end. A reflexive verb is used when the person doing the action is also the person that receives the action. In other words, it's something that I'm doing to myself, or that we are doing to ourselves, or that my dog is doing to itself, or the teacher is doing to their self. It's just whoever is doing the action also receives the action. So, to identify it, it's those verbs that have the se at the end. We talked about that. That's from our vocab list. Bañarse, afeitarse, cepillarse, llamarse. All of those are reflexive verbs. So let's look at some reflexive and non-reflexive verbs together. Because there are verbs, I can say, well, let's take a look at the first one. I have yo blank acuesto temprano. I go to bed early, or I put myself to bed. And that blank, I'm going to have that may. And that may there, that's called my reflexive pronoun. Every time we use the reflexive verb, we have a reflexive pronoun. Now, when you notice about this verb, when I conjugated it, the verb is acostarse. So that se went to the front, and I changed my reflexive pronoun based on my subject. My subject is yo. That's why I'm with me. We'll talk in a little bit about what those reflexive pronouns are. So yo me acuesto temprano. I go to bed, or I put myself to bed. And then I have our second example, yo acuesto a mis hijos temprano. I put my kids to bed. Who's doing the action in that? I'm doing the action in that. But who's receiving the action? My kids. That's who's receiving the action. So it's not me. So it's not reflexive. So I'm not going to use a reflexive pronoun. Tu blank vistes. You get dressed, or you dress yourself. So again, tu is my subject. My reflexive pronoun is te, and it's referring to I am dressing myself, or you are dressing yourself. You are the one doing the action. You are the one receiving the action. Tu vistes a tu hija. You dress your daughter. So again, now you is my subject, but your daughter is the one who's receiving the action. Because it's your daughter receiving the action, it's no longer reflexive, so I don't need to use my reflexive pronoun. Papa blank baña. Dad takes a bath. That blank is going to be se, based on my subject papa. Papa se baña. Dad takes a bath, or dad bathes himself. Dad is doing the action. Dad is receiving the action. Papa baña al perro. Dad bathes the dog. Dad is doing the action, but the dog is receiving the action. So since the person doing the action is not receiving the action, then it's not going to be a reflexive verb, and we don't use the reflexive pronoun. So in the first sentences, you see the first sentences, all are actions that people are doing to themselves. That's the idea of I put myself to bed. I dress myself. Dad bathes himself. The second sentence is the subject is doing the action, but someone else is receiving the action. We kind of talked about this on the way. And it says, now notice the presence of the blank in the non-reflexive sentences. So look at all three of my non-reflexive sentences. Yo acuesto a mis hijos temprano. Tu vistes a tu hija. Papá baña al perro. There's one word that each of those sentences has, and it's my a. In this case, and they have the contraction of al because it's a, el. We don't use that in Spanish. In each case, this is called the personal a, or a personal in Spanish, because if a person is the object of a sentence, the person is receiving the action, you put an a in front of it to denote that it's a person. All right, let's look at this little box here. We have ella se lava blank manos. She washes her hands. In Spanish, if we're talking about a body part with a reflexive verb, we're always going to use just the definite article. So in this case, it's ella se lava las manos. The reason why is if I say ella se lava sus manos, as in she washes her hands, I already know they're her hands because it's a reflexive verb. If it wasn't her hands, it wouldn't be a reflexive verb. So if I were to say ella se lava tus manos, which would sound like she is washing your hands, what we're thinking, but what it really is she is washing your hands, her own hands. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. So if I wanted to say that, I would get rid of the se and say, ella lava tus manos. She washes your hands. But again, she would not be receiving the action, so it's not reflexive. Okay, so a bit about intro to reflexives there. We kind of compared them to non-reflexive sentences. Let's really look at how to form them now. So when we're using reflexive verbs, the se changes according to the subject. So whatever the subject is, that se will change with the reflexive pronouns. So let's look at our box here before we look at our verbs. So the reflexive pronouns, which is at the end we see as se, there are 6. We have me for verbs that's for subjects that are yo, te for the subject tu, se for the subjects él, ella, and usted, nos when the subject is nosotros, os when the subject is vosotros, remember that one's only used in Spain, and then se when the subject is ellos, ellas, or ustedes. So you can note that the third person, the él, ella, usted, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes, is the same. So it's always going to be se. So let's look at our verbs now. So we have the verb afeitar, meaning to shave, which in the present tense conjugates normally. Afeito, afeitas, afeita, afeitamos, afeitais, afeitan. Now if I have afeitarse, meaning to shave oneself, since it has the reflexive, I'm going to include my reflexive pronouns. If I'm thinking of my chart, my yo form is going to match with me. Me afeito. Te afeitas. Se afeita. Nos afeitamos. Os afeitais. And se afeitan. So I changed the meaning from I shave with afeito to I shave myself with me afeito. All right. So note that stem changers will still stem change. So the thing about reflexive verbs is that it's not a verb tense, it's a type of verb. So a reflexive verb can be used in any verb tense. So I can use it in the present or the preterite that we've already learned, or I can use it with the imperfect that we're learning later this year. I can use it with the present progressive that you've already learned. You can use it with future tenses, with the perfect tenses, which you'll learn in Spanish 3. It's just a type of verb that fits into any verb tense. So let's looking at this real quick. The stem changers will still stem change. So you're going to conjugate vestir. So basically there's 2 parts there. Vestir, as you would normally in the present tense. It's an E to I stem changer, so it's visto, vistes, viste, vestimos, vestis, visten. And remember, you can see that that's all in the boot with our boot verb. And then our reflexive pronouns just go in front. Me visto, te vistes, se viste, nos vestimos. Remember, it didn't get stem change because not in the boot. Oops. Os vestis, again, not stem change, not in the boot. And then se visten. All right. So let's talk about placement. When we're placing the reflexive verb, if there's only one verb, I only have one option. If I have 2 verbs, I have 2 options for where to put the reflexive pronoun. So when there's only one verb, your reflexive pronoun goes before the verb. When you have 2 verbs, the reflexive pronoun can go before the verb or attached to the second verb. So let's look at our first example here of I take a shower. I take a shower, I shower myself. So I have yo ducho. What's my reflexive pronoun going to be for yo? I look back at my chart. I have me, te, se, no, so, se. Well, the yo box is around where me would be, so it's going to be me. Yo me ducho. And then I have I am going to take a shower. Yo blank voy a duchar. So I'm going to shower myself. Same idea, that's still reflexive because the person doing the action is still I and the person receiving the action is still me. So I can do it the way I did, which is before my conjugated verb, which in this case is ir to voy. So yo me voy a duchar. Or I can attach it to duchar. Yo voy a duchar me. A big mistake here is that that reflexive pronoun still needs to match the subject. A lot of people want to keep it unconjugated, and they think that means they can just put yo voy a ducharse. But that doesn't work because se doesn't match yo. So it still has to match the subject. So again, I am taking a shower. Now we're looking at the present progressive. So yo, this is an I'm currently showering. Like for some reason, your mom comes home and yells, hey, where are you? And you say, oh, I'm taking a shower from the bathroom. I have yo me estoy duchando, as in, again, it goes before my conjugated verb, in this case, estoy. Or yo estoy duchando me, still attached. You'll note that this is not an infinitive. Duchando is not the verb, it's duchar. Duchando is my present participle that we use with the present progressive. Those are ing words in English. I am showering. Yo estoy duchándome, then, since it's not an infinitive, I want to keep the stress in the right place. So let's think about how I said that again. Duchándome. Where was my stress? My stress was on the A. So how do I keep the stress on the A? I have to add an accent mark. And that's for any time you would use it this way. Anytime you want to put the reflexive pronoun attached to a present participle, you're going to put an accent mark on the A, or if it's an ER or IR verb, on the E in yendo. So if I were to say I am, I got to think of a verb. If I am falling asleep currently, yo me estoy durmiendo, or yo estoy durmiéndome, with an accent mark on the E. All right. Let's move on to some sample setups of questions and answers. Another thing that a lot of people do with questions in general is that we forget that we ask a question with one subject, and the answer that would be given would be with a different one. For example, we have, did you brush your teeth? The question, our answer to that will hopefully be, yes, I brushed my teeth. It's not, yes, you brushed your teeth. So in Spanish, we have to remember to change our subject and change how we conjugate the verb. This is something that a lot of people struggle with when we start having to deal with conversations or writing down answers to questions. But remember, look at your subject in your question. If it's a second person subject, so you, you're going to respond with or first person subject, I or we. If it's a first person subject, I or we, you're going to respond with a second person subject. I'm sorry, if it's, second person subject, you or you all. If it's third person, he or she or they, you're going to respond with he, she, or they, because that one doesn't have to change. Did he brush his teeth? Yes, he brushed his teeth. It's the same. All right, let's look at our setup now. This has, did you brush your teeth? So what's my reflexive pronoun going to be for tú? Te. ¿Te cepillaste tú los dientes? Did you brush your teeth? So let's look at my response. Si yo blank cepillé los dientes, or no, yo no blank cepillé los dientes. So what's my reflexive pronoun for yo? Me. And note that these are all in the preterite. Again, we can use reflexive verbs in any verb tense. So no matter what it is, we can use it there. Do you have to brush your teeth? Oh, so now I'm adding another verb. So now I have two options because I have two verbs. I have and to brush. So I can do it the way that we learned, which is before my conjugated verb, which in this case is tener. So I can have, te tienes que cepillar los dientes. Or I can have, tienes que cepillarte los dientes. It's attached. Now I don't need to add an accent mark to this one like I did to duchando, because it's still just the infinitive, cepillar. So I have my responses. Si yo tengo que cepillar blank los dientes. So now I have yo. What's my reflexive pronoun for yo? Me. Si yo me tengo que cepillar los dientes. No, yo no tengo que cepillarme los dientes, or no, yo no me tengo que cepillar los dientes. So when it comes to where to put your Reflexive pronoun, if all else fails, just remember that it's always acceptable, always acceptable to put it before the conjugated verb. You never have to attach it. It's kind of more of a preference. For me, a lot of times I prefer to attach it to the end, but if you don't, that's still 100% correct, as long as it's there. So if the reflexive verb needs a reflexive pronoun. All right, take another minute or so, look back through the video if you need to, write down any questions you may have, and have these notes ready in our next class.